Today, when we're talking about starting up, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs are facing. So, two questions on that. One is how important is it, and second one is, does it really make sense for them to start looking for that before, or is it okay if you do it through the process?
I just address it in a couple of different ways. One is the importance of it, irrespective of what approach you take. And then the other one is how should you go about it. It's certainly, I think, at least my experience based on working with over 100 investments that we made, it has been, particularly if you are a first-time entrepreneur, it makes sense to, having said that, it doesn't mean everybody needs it, but I would say that's the 80-20 rule. You could be the 20% that don't fall within that need of a partner. And then you get into, we can discuss, why and so on and so forth. But the second point is, what time do you, would you need to have them early, or would you need to have them later? Or, of course, those are, there is no perfect answer to that. When you find the right partner, I think it's the right time to get, have a partnership. It's more important to get the right partner than get them at saying that there's the right time for it. It's certainly better to have them at the beginning of the journey. But I think making sure that this right partner is probably the most important advice I can leave, even at the, in fact, I can stop my speech right now and say I've done my job. If I can convince you and persuade you that spending time and making the right choice in terms of finding the right or the appropriate partner, both the financial partner as well as your working partner. And again, I'm not suggesting that there is you will get into a relationship, let me call it that, saying that this person is the right partner, but you might find, and in fact, you should be prepared to address this thing at the end of maybe 6 months to a year, that is this person the right partner, and vice versa, that for the other person, are you the right partner? And I think taking stock after a period of time is also very critical, because the expectations are that there is, just like in marriage, most of you may not be married, that there is this right person who can be your spouse. There is no such thing. There's a matter of compromise, there's a matter of giving and taking, and that's what happiness is all about, and that's what success is all about. So all I'm saying is I'm giving a long yarn about this partnership thing, only because I believe that probably is the most important thing that you could have as a startup journey. Very important to have the right people backing you. You can climb the mountains, you can scale any challenges, you can do whatever you need to do. But if without that, there is something missing, that you might still pull it off. You might be the 80-20 group, but it's a challenge.
Coming to the point that you made just now, that you have to review your partnership as you go along, because obviously everything is not right. Things could look very good when nothing is on the table, but as companies start scaling up, you might find that somebody is not pulling their weight. Somebody is screwing up somewhere. Company is valued at, let's say, $100 million. Then obviously tempers start flying and things happening, right? So what happens when partnerships go wrong? What have you seen, and how can entrepreneurs actually try getting out of it without getting too messy?
Right. Now that's the. You keep taking an analogy about a marriage, and then you say, do marriages fail? They fail, and do they happily fail? Sometimes yes, they do happily fail, where both people are happy about parting. And that same analogy could happen here. Now it's about, in a marriage, of course, it's about your both well-being and happiness. In a business, there is a third entity which is not just the well-being of both of you, but also this value you're building for other stakeholders, which are the employees and the investors. Of course, in a family there are also kids involved. I guess I'm just struggling to see. It's a fairly it's an important question. It's a complex question. How does one preempt somewhat most of those issues? That is one part of it. The other part of it, if it is inevitable, it's going to happen, how do you deal with it? So the preempting part is to do with managing your own expectations, and your partner also having dialogues about saying they also manage their own expectations of what you can do. That expectation setting is a very important engagement that we constantly do, even in our own partnership. Keep on re-evaluating, are we delivering as per the expectations we set to each other or not? So that is how you actually have to manage your partnership, from the point of view of preempting a possible break. And if even if it's a question of saying that your skill sets are not the right kind of skill sets, your partners or your own, after you reach a certain stage, then if that is the expectation you start setting and accepting it, then it becomes very easy to deal with it. There are other roles one can find within the organization while still building value, or you can monetize it in some way or something, and you can move on with life and be happy about it, all of you. So the expectation setting, managing it, your own expectations, the other person's expectations, and taking stock of, are we delivering vis-a-vis our expectations or not? I think that's the preempting part. Now the part about, so what do you do if, you agree to disagree, and which is what happens. If you both agree, each of you is not delivering as per the expectation, then it's a different matter. If you disagree, then, obviously there are legal agreements. At some point of time, each of these agreements need to get more and more refined in terms, as investors come into your business, you will be getting into agreements which kind of address roles and responsibilities and so on. So there will be legal structures which should address it. There should be exit clauses for each partner, and that may be too early to think of now, but that is something which will also come. So there's a legal part of it, which is one way of saying when it happens, how do you deal with it? That's one part you have to deal with. Then, there could be business, typically it's going to be again because somebody is not delivering as they're supposed to deliver vis-a-vis what the stage of the business requirement is. It's not been, predicted as well as to what would be required, and now suddenly you've grown so fast, which is a happy circumstance, of course. But so those situations will happen. Now, how do you deal with it? I think it's only dialogue, communication, saying this is what I expected to do. I delivered this or I didn't deliver it. I have a problem. You can say I didn't deliver it. So that dialogue is important. That's the only thing. There's a legal part of it. Then there's a real engagement part of it. And I can tell you this, that increasingly, there are people called, going beyond the behavioral, abnormal behavior psychology path. There are life coaches, there are executive coaches for, CEOs and startup founders, where you can, it's basically a third party who's helping you think through what's happening with your life and your own anxieties and the challenges you're facing in the business, and help you cope with it. And such people can also help. There's a Coaching Foundation of India, which is extremely effective, and I've been a part of their program in terms of learning how to be a coach. And we use them to actually help us evaluate when we look at investing in a company, and this is fairly recent though, it's only been about a year that we started using them, to see if there is compatibility between us as financial investors and with them as entrepreneurs. It is not simply to say, going beyond the thing to say that, hey, does this person have the drive and the integrity to kind of push this business to where he wants to take it, he or she, to also to see there's compatibility between us. Are we on the same, it is not just a social skill kind of a thing, it is more to do with, will we actually gel? So that's another thing I would say, that to have third parties who work as counselors, mentors, it could even be a common friend who is who can actually make the separation very smooth, or maybe even prevent the separation if need be. So that's very important to have. We're also doing one more thing in our boards, where we typically have a board position in an investee company as well as an advisor, observer position sometimes, or else we have two board members. We are telling the founders, we want to bring in somebody as our nominee, your friend, who you believe and you trust, who has a fairly smart, financial sensibility, who's able to say, hey guys, these guys are saying something right. And overall, I know that we are going to be trying to be doing the fair thing and the right thing. So again, I'm making the illustration to make the point that it's good to have such a counselor / mentor, advisor, who both of you believe, not just one, to be there as part of your group.
When we're talking about this, right, so there's one more person in the ecosystem that helps startups, which is the mentor. The infamous word that is, I think, overused today.
Right.
So, been hearing a lot about mentors are good, mentors have to be there, but also picking the right mentor. What is your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, I think this is, as you said it, overused term. We think we are mentors. I think they'll have a lot of mentors amongst their friends and relatives and colleagues, ex-colleagues. I think there is one important thing. Okay, how seriously do you take it as a mentor? I think that's a question every entrepreneur should ask themselves. I mean, are you open to saying, I don't know everything, and then being able to say, when somebody, if you choose somebody as an advisor or a mentor, it may be a formal label, it may be an informal label. Either way, would you actually take this advice seriously and actually examine it to see whether they're making sense or not? And you will have to make a judgment call at some point of time to say, no, that's absolute nonsense. And sometimes you say you agree with it. Now, let's take the situation when you say you don't, I'm rambling, I don't know why I'm rambling, but you ask me tough questions. So, so the point I'm trying to get to is, it goes to the crux of the choice of mentors and the importance of mentors. The question is, you choose the mentor not because they're an expert in every damn thing that your business is going to face. You're going to choose the mentor because they have experience in certain areas where you're not experienced. You believe that that experience cannot be got from the internet or by reading something. So therefore, you're basically using that person. And in such situations, if you basically, that's the reason why you're talking to them, you should take that advice seriously. You might have to make a judgment call and say, yeah, my gut says don't do it, but he's saying so strongly, right? And if you have a good mentor, I think that's, you'll get an advice. They will also be listening to you to see what's right for you. So the point I'm trying to make is that ability to use the mentor is actually very critical. That's more important, because if you get even the best mentor out there, if you don't have this approach or the attitude or the ability to seriously consider why you've taken him on board and for what areas to advise you, and therefore use him in those situations very sincerely, if you don't do that, then you're wasting your time. Then you don't have a mentor.
But how do you select the right mentor? I mean, how do you figure out that this guy is probably a good mentor? Is it, he's done this in the past, he looks great, let's talk to him, or he's got domain expertise, or what would constitute that?
Yeah, I think it's a good practical question, because, how do you just up when you're starting a company, why should anybody want to be your mentor to begin with, right? So
And you compensate a mentor. Is that something that people are expected to do?
Yeah. So how do you, both of those good questions. So, so the point about this mentorship is, it has to be somebody who feels that there's a passion to be involved in such activity about mentoring and in those kinds of startups. And therefore they're gaining something out of this relationship and engagement. So which is, again, goes back to the previous point. If you don't take somebody who's passionate about it, and you just disregard his advice 80% of the time and not 20%, then he's going to just walk out and stop applying himself to giving you or making the connections or giving you the right advice or those kinds of things. So so how do you pick, so you have to evaluate this passion bit. Is this person getting something out of it beyond, either talking about it to his friends in his social circle, saying I'm a mentor and so on, or perhaps, getting, maybe you will give him some sweat equity or not, but whether you give it or not, it's up to you guys. I think the first thing is to evaluate, do they really enjoy this activity? Do they want to give it? And then you evaluate, of course, their capability to give it. That's what we're then evaluating. So here, capability-wise, I would say would be.
So how, is there any thought process on how they can bootstrap effectively?
It's a good question. It's a very practical question for everybody who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur. And it is actually a very tough question. Thematic answer to it, at least I don't see it. If you are somewhat of a glib answer,